A warm welcome to Diski Talk with Luyolo. If you're tuning in for the very first time, I ask that you please subscribe and hit the notification bell. So, on today's episode, we discuss all things Euro 2020 final as I preview Italy versus England, which will be contested at Wembley. So, because it is a special feature episode, I am all alone today and I've got my tactical board with me, and I will be looking at England versus Italy with regards to how the two teams are going to set up in the final. So let's get right into it, ladies and gentlemen. So the red team will be England and the blue team will be Italy. So with regards to how England have been setting up throughout the tournament, they have been more or less using a 4-2-3-1, and at times, yes, we did see them use a back five when they had the two wing backs. However, the most used or commonly used formation that they have been using has been the 4-2-3-1. So heading into this final, you will have Pickford in goals. At right back, I think they will start with Kyle Walker. He started most of the games. The centre-back partnership of John Stones and Maguire. Left back, Luke Shaw. The two pivots being Phillips and Declan Rice. And then Mason Mount just ahead of them. And then the three up front being Harry Kane. And then you got Raheem Sterling and you got Bukayo Saka. So with regards to England, I will start from the back and work it all the way through. So when we look at England, with regards to their defensive structure, we see that they do set up in a 4, but it's a very conservative 4. I say that because you hardly ever see Kyle Walker bombing forward. So in a situation where they're in the opponent's half, this is what we'll see against Italy. So I just want to give you an illustration of more or less where we're going to see them occupying the spaces. So when they do find themselves on the ball and in the opponent's half, you're going to see that Kyle Walker is not one that will bomb up and down that line as your traditional wing backs would do in modern day football. However, Kyle Walker does invert and he does keep the shape. On the left hand side, Luke Shaw from time to time, he does tend to overlap and bomb on forward if they space. But in this game against Italy, because it's going to be a tight game, because it's going to be a final, I think that Southgate would like him to be a lot more conservative and to be tucked in. And then moving into the midfield too with Declan Rice and Calvin Phillips, they tend to occupy deeper roles within the midfield to protect the back four, especially if they find themselves in high up the pitch in the opposition half. And then you'd have your Mason Mount there. Yes, I don't think that in this game he would be deployed as a number 10, because I think that he's going to be very important when it comes to helping out going that way, as opposed to him just being focused on the offensive side of the game. And then normally you would have Raheem Sterling high and wide, Saka high and wide, which then does give England that width. So instead of the wing backs being the ones that will give them the width, it will be the two wingers when they do find themselves in the opposition half. So another thing that I want to mention is the duality of England's 4-2-3-1, which can sometimes transition into a 4-3-3, because sometimes you'll have Declan Rice drop deep, and then you have Mason Mount go the other side, and then you have Calvin Phillips on the other side. So they can act as two number 8s. And the nice thing about this then is that with a Calvin Phillips on this side, he does then like to attack those inverted channels. And same thing would be for Mason Mount. And what I like about Mason Mount, who I think is going to be a key player in this final, is that he's not just good with the ball and offensively, but he's also very good without the ball. And I think he's going to be very important when it comes to counter pressing. So when you then have a look at Italy and how Italy will set up, Italy generally set up with a 4-3-3. And in their 4-3-3, at right back, we've had Di Lorenzo, two centre-backs, Chiellini and Bonucci. At left back, it will be Emerson. Unfortunately, Spinazzola did pick up an injury, so he will not be involved in the final. Donnarumma in goals, who I think has been the best goalkeeper during this tournament. A midfield three of Jorginho, Barella, and Verratti. And then up front, you've got Immobile, Insigne, who comes off the left, and then Berardi has started there and Chiesa has, but based on form, I'd like to think that Chiesa will start there. So having a look at Italy when they are in the opposition half, I just want us to have a look at more or less the formation that they would take up and the shape that they would have. So what we're looking at Italy being high up there. You got your two number 8s in Barella and Verratti, and then you got Jorginho, and then you've got the back four. So with Di Lorenzo, he's a player who's a lot more on the conservative side. You hardly ever see him bombing up and down. He will tuck in, he will invert, and he sort of becomes the third centre-back, if you'd like to say. And then the two in there being Bonucci and Chiellini, whenever they do get onto the ball and they're in the opposition first half, they do occupy quite advanced roles with regards to how high up they are on the pitch. And then on the left-hand side, this is something which is actually interesting. So it's not the same, it's actually different on the left-hand side, because on the left-hand side, with Spinazzola, you had Spinazzola going on the outside, Insigne would be inverted in that half space, Spinazzola would go, but now, because they don't have Spinazzola, they lack a bit of that. However, Emerson still does give you that attacking threat, so we will see Emerson a lot more pushed up in this area where you have Insigne in the half space, and then on the right hand side Chiesa will be the one who keeps the width, as opposed to this side where it is the wing back. So that's the duality of this Italian system when we look at it from a wing play perspective and we look at the relationship that a fullback and a winger would have. In this case, you've got the fullback, which being Di Lorenzo, would be a lot more conservative. You've got Chiesa, who would keep the width. However, on this side, you've got Emerson, who will bomb forward, and then you've got Insigne, who then inverts and occupies the half space. And then you do have Barella, who will be pushed up, and then you've got Verratti in and around that area. And then normally then you'll see Chiellini start to push up just a bit to the left. Then you have Bonucci, and then you got Di Lorenzo. So in a sense, with Jorginho as the pivot, they then form somewhat of a diamond. This defensive diamond is actually very important for them, especially when England will look to win the ball quickly and hit them on the counter. With this strong defensive diamond, it forces England to go wide as opposed to penetrating them through the middle. And then one thing that I also would like to look at concerning this Italian team, which gets very interesting, is that when they really go offensive and they really pen a team back, you'll often see that it even ends up looking somewhat of a 3-2-5 when you have Barella up there, you'll have Immobile as a striker, you've got Insigne there, and then you've got Emerson right up. They form the 5 across, which will obviously then push England to be a lot more tucked in, a lot more conservative. And this is what Italy has done throughout the group stages, throughout the knockout competitions, except against Spain, where they really struggled to impose themselves in that game. But in this game, they will have majority of the ball possession. And with regards to this, what I like about it is that it gives them so much width. At the same time, they're also occupying the half spaces, and they're also able to penetrate those channels. So the channels that Italy are looking to exploit is the channel in between the fullback and the centre back, and same thing on this side. And that's where we see an Insigne. He does a lot of his work in this area, looking always to cut into zone 14. This is an important zone. We know it as zone 14. So this is where Insigne does a lot of his work. With Chiesa on the other side, he's a lot more wider. And he likes then to go one-on-one with his man. You know, he can cut in, he can go on the other side as well. With Immobile, he's then obviously looking to occupy the two center halves. And what I like about him is that he's a very intelligent striker, you know, who's got very good movement. So at times, you may see him make certain runs in behind. You may see him stretch this back four. And then you have Insigne coming a lot closer. And then with regards to them having this shape, then you've got a Jorginho and you've got a Verratti who are very good at pulling the strings from deep, you know. So that then is more or less how Italy are offensively so. But one thing now I want to look at with regards to Italy, I want to look at their defensive structure. So with England, we do know that they will be very compact, they're very conservative, they don't have wing backs who bomb on forward. However, the very interesting thing about Italy is how compact they become when they don't have the ball. You know, this then nullifies the opposition, and what it does is that it ensures that certain players on the field of play are protected, especially players like Jorginho, players like Chiellini, who don't have the legs that other players within this Italian fold would have. Because the big question mark coming into this tournament was, does Chiellini have the legs? You know, and everybody was asking that question because when you look at his age, you think maybe he's over the hill. However, Chiellini's performances throughout this tournament have been absolutely amazing. And he's shown us that for Amadala, he's still got quite a bit left in the tank. So what I love about Italy when they are in a defensive shape and why it becomes very difficult for teams to break them down, even a team as free-flowing and as fluid as Spain. Yes, Spain did have certain chances to actually penetrate, but they couldn't do it consistently where they were able to break Italy down and get that goal. What I like about Italy is how compact they become. And with them becoming compact, it starts then from a midfield perspective. It protects Jorginho, a player who many people question his legs with regards to the other side of the job when it comes to playing football. But on the ball, we all know that he's fantastic. He controls a football game very well. And then when you have Barella, you got Verratti, they are very, very, very good on and off the ball. So they do also offer a bit of that defensive acumen because they can go box to box if needs be. They do go the other way. But now a thing that I would like to look at is sort of how compact they become and a pentagon shape that they've often come to create, especially when teams are trying to break them down the middle. So you will see that Immobile, as a striker, will take up that position. Insigne comes a lot more tucked in. You've got Chiesa who comes in as well. So what then this does is that it forces opposition to go wide. And with them having to go wide, it becomes then very difficult for them to obviously penetrate and be able to find that zone 14 that most teams are looking for. Because we do know that it is a lot easier to score goals when you are creating from a central perspective. So what I like about Italy here is that it becomes very, very difficult to break them down. And in this shape, what it does is at times it kills two birds with one stone. I say this because they've kept their tactical discipline, they've kept their shape. However, if you're not careful and you guys have pushed high up, Italy with the speed of Insigne, Chiesa, and Immobile, they can catch you on the counter, you know. So that's another thing that I wanted to pinpoint regarding this Italian side, that it's not just them being very good on the ball, it's not them just imposing themselves, but they're also very good at defensive solidity. They're also very good at sitting deep, getting that ball and hitting you on the counter. They can do that if needs be. They've got that to their armory. So when then we have a look at who will be the key players, I've pinpointed a few players who I think will be key. So I'll start with England. So I think the key player for England will be Mason Mount. And I say that because he's going to be very important when it comes to making sure that Jorginho doesn't get on the ball and start dictating terms. So if Mason Mount can get as close as possible to Jorginho with his energy and with his pressing, I think that's half the job done for England. And I know a lot of you viewers will obviously be like, what, half the job done? What are you saying, Liolo? I say half the job done because the importance of this man and how he pulls the strings for Italy deep in midfield, you know, has been quite phenomenal. You stop Jorginho from playing, this Italy side don't have that confidence. They don't have that ability to play that free-flowing, fluid football. And we saw that against Spain because instead of it being another midfielder, they started Olmo as a false nine, but he always dropped in deep, and him dropping deep, he was always very close to Jorginho, and he put pressure on Jorginho. So it was very difficult for Jorginho to get on the ball and dictate terms. So from an England perspective, I feel that Mason Mount is the first player I've pinpointed. The second player I've pinpointed will be Raheem Sterling. I say that because Italy will have the ball in this game. It's guaranteed. If you watch football and you've been watching this tournament, Italy will have the ball possession, especially against an England side that doesn't have too many ball players who are looking to keep the ball. And anyway, Gareth Southgate doesn't set up like that. How Gareth Southgate sets up, he sets up in such a way where he's defensively sound. He sets up in such a way where he stifles opposition and he nullifies them in order to be able to make sure that he's got control of the game and that we don't see teams being able to create too many clear-cut chances. So moving back to Raheem Sterling, the reason why I say he's going to be so important is because Italy, for most periods of the game, will find themselves in more or less this situation. And when they find themselves in this situation, that's where Raheem Sterling then becomes very important on the counter-attack. And I believe that in world football, he's one of the best players when it comes to playing on the counter-attack. And we saw his performance against Denmark, how many ball carries he had, and how he just kept tormenting the Danes with his speed. So he's going to be very important, especially when it comes to England releasing that ball. And another thing that I want to mention with regards to England, England have to be very careful with regards to playing out from the back. They have to be very careful. If they can play a lot more direct and get Sterling on that counter, it will do them a world of good. And then again, it's also killing two birds with one stone. One, getting Sterling in on the counter and making sure that Italy don't win that ball back high up, because the Italians are very aggressive with their counter pressing. So then moving on to the Italians and players who I think will be very important coming into this game, I've highlighted quite a few players who I think that will have a big say in this game. And the first player that I would like to have a look at is Jorginho. Now that then takes it to a great showdown between Jorginho and Mason Mount. And I say Jorginho because once he gets his foot onto the ball, he's the whole system. He controls the whole game for Italy, and that's when we start to see Barella coming in, Verratti coming in. Against Spain, he didn't really have the control. He didn't really have the dominance in midfield, and that's why these two players struggled. So he's going to be a very, very, very important player. And then having a look at Chiesa and Insigne. I'll start with Chiesa. The reason why I say Chiesa is going to be very important is because one-on-one, coming up against Luke Shaw, I think that Chiesa can really go at Luke Shaw and he can really test Luke Shaw, you know, and I think that Chiesa can profit here. Yes, Luke Shaw has been on form and he's done well. However, with the speed that Chiesa has, with the trickery as well, I think that he can catch Luke Shaw off guard. With regards to Insigne, England are very rigid and England like to make sure that they defensively sound. And it's going to be of paramount importance that Insigne is able to operate in these pockets of spaces where he's able to break down that defensive solidity. Last but not least, a man who I think is due a goal and due a big performance, definitely Ciro Immobile. You know, I feel like in the past few games he has been missing a bit for Italy. Take nothing away from the other side of his game, where he stretches the defense, where he works tirelessly, you know, making the runs into the channels. But I think that he's due a goal and he's due a big performance, you know. And coming up against such a strong defensive pairing, the best defense within the Euros, this is the time for Ciro Immobile to actually upset the apple cart and he can win the game for Italy, you know. But, ladies and gentlemen, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy for Italy. It's not going to be easy for England. However, to conclude on the extra time segment of today's episode, it is my prediction as to how I think this game will play out. So, gentlemen and ladies, I think that Italy will win this game, and I say that Italy will win this game 2-1. My goal scorers, Ciro Immobile, Insigne, and for England, I foresee Raheem Sterling scoring. That is my prediction, ladies and gentlemen, and that is my preview of the final of the Euro 2020 between England versus Italy. And as always, I am your host with the most, and I go by the name of Luyolo. Thank you very much for tuning in to this special feature episode where you guys got to witness me previewing the final tactically and looking at certain technical players who will have a huge impact on this game. Thank you very much for tuning in. Signing out.